No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Helaena is dead, and life is meaningless. I knew her death was coming, and I still wanted to summit my monitor. At least they spared me of having to watch Helena's downward flight and impallations. By the way, Helaena marks the second of my favorite female supporting characters dying via window. Now is not really the time and place for a tangent about Fuchsia Grown, but it sucks for me having to go through this twice. I love making things about me. House of the Dragon Season 3 Episode 8 is titled The Treasons at Tumbleton. There will be spoilers for the future of House of the Dragon, but I'll warn you first.
Fucking Viserys!
On that, Rhaenyra, we can agree. Let's just discuss Helena's death now, even though it happens at the end. She's been upset for quite some time, cause Rhaenyra's Team Black murdered her son Jaery, and because she's been under house arrest all season, with only brief visitations with her daughter Jaery, and the fear of the baby in her belly getting taken away from her as well. She's been stitching on this tapestry all season about the dance, showing Rhaenyra bloody on the Iron Throne, and herself falling from a window, meaning she's been planning this for some time? Why? Helaena has dragon dreams, and those dreams have made her believe that her own death won't matter, it wouldn't change anything, and Aegon will be king again, everything she tells Aemond in last season's finale.
I could have you killed.
It wouldn't change anything.
So if her own death doesn't change anything, why do it? Was it purely out of depression and a desire to escape her present living conditions? Or is there some magical element at play that she believes she must die now in the service of prophecy or some nebulous idea like that? My only gripe is that something as serious as Queen Helena's death should have very concrete motivations. The book has that motivation, but the show removed it. This was one of George Martin's gripes from his blog post nearly 2 years ago now. He read the scripts for Season 3 and realized Helaena still kills herself for no particular reason. There is no fresh horror, no triggering event to overwhelm the fragile young queen. The triggering event in Fire and Blood is the brutal death of Maelor at the hands of a mob in Bitterbridge. Helaena was already mad with grief after Jaehaerys died, but the fresh horror of Maelor's death is what sparked her suicide. In the show, Maelor is a Thetis who Helaena takes out with her, which also proves, in the end, that she was fine with aborting Maelor after all. She refused Alicent's moon tea in episode 5, suggesting she planned for herself and Maelor to live. Suggesting her decision to jump in this episode was a very recent development. Given that there is no fresh horror to explain Helena's decision, George's complaint is still valid, and I'm left wondering why she did all that.
Fucking Viserys!
Also, earlier in the episode, Helaena says their father would hate Rhaenyra for this. What? Hate her for what? I really love Helaena, but I got sick of the writers seemingly only using her for cold yet incoherent one-liners all the time. Viserys would hate Rhaenyra for taking King's Landing? No, he was pretty adamant his whole life that Rhaenyra should succeed him. Helaena was literally there for that. And Vizzy called Rhaenyra his only child, despite having 4 other children.
My only child.
Or she means Viserys would hate Rhaenyra for her treatment of Helaena? Well no, he'd be upset the Greens usurped her, and also Rhaenyra isn't even treating Helaena that badly, all things considered. And Helena's line about life meaning more than simply not being dead, again, it goes really hard, but it's a non sequitur. Maybe Helaena means she isn't afraid of dying, which becomes clear, and that she'd rather die than live like this? Whatever, man. I did like that part about the beetle, how it comes out in summer to feast on other animals' poop. Helaena calls it beautiful. I've got 2 interpretations. One, the beetle is beautiful because it makes use of things nobody else wants. Helaena herself might feel unwanted, different as she is intellectually, and alone much of her life. Maybe she wishes someone could make use of her. Aegon only used her for babies, and Aemond wanted to use her for burning, but nobody cared about her and her dreams. Or she's comparing Rhaenyra to the beetle.
Smash the beetles!
That Rhaenyra is a decomposer who only lives if there's dead things around her. Aegon, Aemond, Daemon, where will it end? Probably not though, since Helaena calls the beetle beautiful and then calls Rhaenyra ugly.
You, yourself, ugly. Eat.
I hate her, 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 I hate her. Damn, never mind. She's fitted the fuck out, man. She's serving the C word I'm not allowed to say. Usually when there's a direct conflict between two people at the crux of a narrative, that narrative has, at the very least, included a singular line of dialogue between the two foes as groundwork for their eventual climactic fight. All this Rhaenyra versus Aegon framing would hit a lot harder if they had any established relationship prior to an entire civil war breaking out between them. When either of them talks about the other, it feels extremely tell but don't show. They botched that rivalry, is my point. Also, Baela is sort of right about Rhaenyra not being appreciative of her efforts to sniff out her enemies, but she's forgetting that Rhaenyra's enemies are her enemies too. It's completely valid for Rhaenyra to want Baela to stay at King's Landing and kill Aegon should he arrive on Sunfire. That's necessary if Baela wants to live, so it's dumb of her to say your enemies rather than our enemies. And now I want to mention something spoilery, so skip to this timestamp to avoid that if you need to. I think it really sucks that Rhaenyra knows Sunfire is alive. It makes her final confrontation on Dragonstone just sauceless, since it won't be much of a surprise when she finds Aegon there. Plus now I'm guessing Joffrey will be present instead of Aegon III, since Joff is the correct age for that, and he's following Rhaenyra around like Aegon should be doing. Who cares about the future, I guess, when you know you're not adapting it. Rhaenyra's arc this season, ever since taking King's Landing, has been balancing the two voices on her shoulders. Mysaria, her angel telling her to placate the smallfolk, and Daemon, her devil telling her to kill everybody in their way and make a new Valyria. So she finally picks Daemon and sends Mysaria packing. It won't be complete fire and blood, since Rhaenyra forbids Daemon from burning Tumbleton's peasantry down with the town, but her actions from here on out will be more Daemon than Mysaria. Starting with Rhaenyra letting go of the Seven, aligning herself with Daemon's insistence that Westerosi gods are beneath them. They are dragon lords, they are gods, or they have higher gods, the namesakes of dragons like Syrax and Vhagar.
You are the blood of old Valyrian. You answer to higher gods than his.
You see how this looks, right?
The small folk are not gonna like that one. Also, I was wrong about this being a coffin behind Alan Velaryon. I figured somebody must be dying, but it's just the litter carrying Joffrey and Rhaenyra to the Sept. Carry on. Wait, no. These banners are off. 4-legged dragon instead of 2. I know dragons aren't real, but this makes no anatomical sense. Their wings are their arms. They don't have 2 wings, 2 arms, and 2 legs. It's ridiculous, man. Alright, now carry on. Alice Rivers tells Aemond this sob story about the wife of King Harren the Black, the guy who built Harrenhal using Riverland slave labor. It was said that Aegon the Conqueror, astride Balerion, killed every last member of House Hoare, but at least in the show's canon, a son lived, burned and soon dying. The mother tried everything to cure him, witches, spells, the green men, but the sorcerer ended up giving her immortality, a curse to live in grief forever, and let her son die. So obviously that woman, the former queen consort of the Kingdom of the Isles and Rivers, was Alys, which is awesome. Maybe George gave this detail to Condal a long time ago, or maybe it's an invention of HBO. Whoever made it up, I love it. Alys is a direct, living, breathing connection to Aegon's conquest and the trauma that came with Harrenhal's rise and fall. My headcanon is that Alys belonged to a Riverlands house that Harren conquered, and probably stole her as a salt wife. Maybe she's a mud. If so, we saw one of her kinsmen in Season 1. Anywho, Rhaenyra looks very King Arthur here. I'm not gonna do another King Arthur tangent, but look, the coif beneath the crown goes crazy. And so has Rhaenyra, apparently, just spilling her beans to these random app peasants about Aegon's prophecy. Oh, don't make me laugh. Sheesh. Instant aura loss. Rhaenyra's on her Rhaegar bullshit. It's Daenerys, girl, hello? Did the silver-haired girl with dragons at her breast mean nothing to you? That's her. Not you, her.
Get the fuck in.
I like this little glance Torrhen Manderly gives Orwyle during Rhaenyra's coke rant. I'm wondering if Orwyle's slight little nod here is saying, yeah man, she's gone nuts. Or if he's saying, yeah, technically she's right about the prophecy. I wouldn't be shocked if the Citadel knew something of this, perhaps through Barth via Jaehaerys, since the Citadel is so linked to the Starry Sept and the Hightower. Or perhaps one of Aegon, Visenya, Maegor, Rhaena, her daughter Aela, or any of the Targaryens who visited Old Town happened to mention something of the prophecy, which the Maesters kept a note of. Or perhaps Orwyle himself just heard a sickly Viserys rambling about it. You know what? I'm turning this molehill into a damn mountain. Gwayne Hightower makes the bold suggestion that Rhaenyra split the realm in two. Everything east and north of the Trident is her domain, and everything to the west and south is King Daeron's, ruling from Old Town. This does come from the book, but it's a captive Alicent proposing it to Rhaenyra, not Gwayne to Daemon. In both cases, the idea is refuted outright. I much prefer Rhaenyra's response in the book. Your sons might have had places of honor at my court if they had kept faith, but they sought to rob me of my birthright, and the blood of my sweet sons is on their hands. Anyways, it's a cool Easter egg for book readers, I guess, and a way to further illustrate how reasonable Gwayne and Daeron are compared to the ambitious Ormund, who meets his end via a sword thrust up his keister. Rather ironic, considering the homophobic jokes he was making about Gwayne, telling Daeron to cover his butt and all that. I'm glad he's dead.
I'm alive!
I once again feel vindicated in believing Tom Glencarney is the best, or tied for the best, actor in this show. The way he can deliver a silly line in an extremely tense moment and then switch to anger, confusion, confundity, it's perfect for Aegon and perfect to me. Here's my top 5 of all HBO Ice and Fire performances, in no particular order because whenever I rank stuff, people call me slurs. The Battle of Tumbleton was really cool, but I never have much to say about battles. They're nice to look at, and it's really neat we got a boss fight between Daemon and Jon Roxton, Dark Sister versus Orphan-Maker, and then between Roddy the Ruin and Ormund Hightower, but that's really it. Nothing bad about it, nothing particularly interesting. The betrayal of Ulf was handled differently. In Fire and Blood he simply switches to Team Green, but here he basically switches to Team Ulf, and just burns everybody. Cool heel turn, a new guide to despise, and actually a nicely written arc. It's very believable, if pathetic, how Ulf went from a drunken sot to a mistreated dragonrider to an evil mass murderer. He got sick of being kicked around and just snapped. It reminds me of another time when HBO made a dragonrider snap during a battle, thus murdering tons of innocent people. But in that case, Dany wasn't a drunken sot, but a lovely queen who people were generally nice to and had no reason to go crazy. But I digress. What they're doing with Hugh is a little confusing. In the book, he switches sides with Ulf, but in the show, his motivation is Cat. After this, he should be blaming Ulf for setting Silverwing's fire against the town, but I'm predicting Hugh will blame Daeron under the assumption that Ulf was still Team Black and Daemon must have commanded him to burn Tumbleton, and that's why Hugh was commanded to stay behind and guard King's Landing, so he wouldn't dip out and try to save Cat. I'll be interested what they do with Hugh next season. 2 years from now, I guess. And these banners are wrong too. Let me know down in the comments your final thoughts on not just the finale, but Season 3 as a whole. Better than Season 2? Yeah, probably. Thanks for tuning in each week for my Chris views, by the way. I've gotten a bunch of new subscribers over the past few weeks, and I'm sort of close to 100k, so if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. As always, this video is brought to you by my Patreon. For $5 per month, you'll get early access to every new video I make, including my next one, which has already been up for patrons for a while, and exclusive stuff like my playthroughs of Crusader Kings 2 Game of Thrones mod. Thank you to everybody whose name is on screen right here, and thanks to all of you as well for watching and subscribing. Alright, love you, goodbye.